Hi there, this is Craig from Ottawa Swordplay, and today I'm going to talk about a concept that I think is really important in general for fighting with weapons, and it is about being aware of target area and making sure that we are picking up threats that are coming into target area. And I do want to make a comment because I often talk about picking up weapons, and I'm not talking about like lifting it up off the ground. I'm talking about displacing an attacker's weapon with your own. Whenever I say picking up a weapon, I probably mean that. Anyway, one of the things is that we can develop judgment and be aware of where people's weapons are, but there's a lot going on in a fight, and sometimes we need to depend on the fact that we are just being secure all of the time, and we are picking up anything that could be coming into a threatened area. Now, this is a concept that I learned from a fencing instructor who's teaching rapier, but is actually mostly a classical foil instructor. But it applies very much to other weapons. Now, does that mean that they were using it historically? Not automatically, but I think that they were, and I'll talk about that in a minute as well. So what the concept is, though, is just that we should be aware of where we can be threatened and make sure that when we are doing a defensive action with our weapon, we are moving it through the area that could be threatened. So right now, theoretically, my whole body is target area, and I have a spear that is about as tall as me that is right beside me. And so if a threat is coming in here, it is definitely coming in on my side of the spear. If I have my spear here, it could be coming in on this side, or it could be coming in on this side. And I don't know which way I need to move the spear. If my spear is here, I know that the threat is coming in here, and if I move my spear across this way, I will pick up that threat and move it away from me, which is where I want the threat to be. All right? Now, I hope that it is obvious that we wouldn't normally fight holding a spear straight up and down and move it across like this. This is illustrating a point, and it is maximum coverage. So there's a whole bunch of things that go into understanding our threatened area, and one of them is the ability to manage distance, and I'm just going to very quickly talk about the concept that we call Überlaufen, overreaching, which is the geometrical idea that if I'm extending a threat at the height of my arms, I can extend much further than I can if my threat is going lower down. And I'm going to line this up here so that you can see when I angle my spear down, I'm losing a fair amount of reach there. So that means if we're managing good distance with an opponent, they may be able to threaten our upper body, but can't reach our lower openings or our legs particularly at that distance. And different people like to fight at different distances. I do not like to close to the distance where my legs can be hit unless I'm so close that we're wrestling. That is my personal, very strong belief, but it fits with what I'm about to talk about here. So I'm going to switch to grossemesser, but what I'm talking about now applies with any weapon. And again, I'm treating it more like a rapier or something like that for the purposes of this demonstration. But if I'm holding my sword with my hand low and my point a little bit high, then it is completely on one side of me, and any threat that is coming in above my waist, I can pick up by bringing my sword across to the other side of my body, like so. And if I've managed my distance well, any threat coming in low can't reach me. So by doing this, I'm able to know what my available target area is and cover that with a simple action. Now there is a little bit of weirdness here as well because my upper body is at an angle, so my left shoulder is actually a little bit further away. Also, depending upon the handedness of my opponent, the angle of their attack coming in, if I start to deflect it, the angulation may move it over. So it's possible that I actually only need to come to here to protect my whole available target area. And that's something that practice and management with this works. But there's two elements that are important here. One is understanding what that target is, and then the other is training yourself to be able to do consistent actions that close off that target area and pick up any available threat that might come into the target that you're presenting. All right? So this is a pretty simple concept in my mind, but I've been working with it for 20 years, so maybe it's not simple for other people. That said, it is a really useful thing, and it is foundational to the way that I think about fighting. So, did they use this in Liechtenauer's art, or the related systems of southern Germany from the early 15th century, 14th century? Well, we don't know 100% for sure, but there are a number of things that I have seen that indicate to me that they were using something along those lines. Some of these come from different weapon sources and stuff like that, but I'm going to start with the longsword, since it's what most people think about and know. So if I'm in my tower guard here and I'm doing the Zornhau, the counter strike, I'm supposed to strike diagonally across my body here, and you can see again, I'm covering my threatened area, closing that line, and it is not a purely defensive action, it is a strike that can that generate its own threat, but I'm closing off that line. Now, people interpret this different ways, but it tells us pretty clearly to lead with the sword, which brings it across there before we step in behind. And there's a whole bunch of reasons why that's a really good idea, but the first one that I'm going to talk about here is that I'm actually clearing that threat before I'm stepping in to distance where I might be hit further from there. So that is, to me, one of the places where they're showing this. And I believe it's in Dobringe where they specifically say, just do your technique, don't worry about where the other person's sword is. If you do your technique well, you will be safe. And that is exactly the idea of what I'm talking about being aware of your threatened area and just automatically covering it. So that says to me, straight up there, that they were using that. But I'm going to give a couple of other examples from the historical sources. So some armored combat techniques that we have. First of all, when I'm half swording, one of the stances that they give us is a basic guard like this. We consider this equivalent to Schrankhood, where I've got my left hand above my left knee and here. And when a threat comes in, I bring my sword up here, and again, I'm covering my entire upper area. I'm also going to point out, if I'm wearing armor, from what they tell us, I mean, the only opening that's going to be visible or available here is the open visor, if it's open, or that kind of thing in the face. My armpit is a target, but because my left shoulder is already forward, I'm kind of covering that. Palms of my hand are out of the way. So I'm intentionally covering the things that might be target, and I'm only leaving one available, which I'm then picking up, and attacking through. But we also have the reverse in armored combat. We see a guard like this, where I'm standing and I've actually got my right foot forward, my pommel is forward on my sword, and now I've got my hands high, so my armpit is available as target. My face is still lower than my sword, but it's actually partly protected by the armor of my arm. So any attacks that are coming in below this sword, and my defense from here is to drop my sword across over that target area and step in, pushing through, and then I can hook the leg or stab into the back of the knee, depending upon what's going on. We see that from Gladiatoria. So those are two opposite ways of doing the same thing with half swording. Because I love Gladiatoria, I've talked about these in another video, but there's two neat things with the spear that are the same idea. So the first one is the reversed spear stance, where I'm holding the spear like this, and it tells me that when their attack comes in with the spear, and this is a melee attack, they're trying to stab me with the spear, I lift up the butt end, and that again is picking up anything that could be coming into my available target area, and now my attack comes in underneath, and I've been certain of where they could hit me, and I've cleared that out. even more clearly is the defense against a thrown spear, where I stand with my spear like this, and the thrown spear is going to come in somewhere above here, and by flipping my spear this way, I'm picking it up and taking it out of the threatened area. And this particular one is something I used to say, this is this cool, crazy thing that you could try, but it would probably never work. Since then, I have trained it to the point that I can do it fairly consistently against an opponent who's throwing a spear from any reasonable range. So it is a trainable technique just because I'm automatically covering the threatened area. So that works. And then from here, I throw the spear, having closed off the target area. All right, so what are some other ways that we can do this that are useful? And we'll go to the grossemesser, but anything we do with grossemesser we can do with longsword, sometimes not as well, but basically the same idea. So the first thing that I want to talk about is that sometimes we do get closer and our legs become a consideration as well. So how do we deal with that? Well, we do have lower guards, and those are useful for some of these things. So I'm just going to point out that if I'm in this version of Kastai or Alber, depending upon what weapon you're using, if I circle my sword around like this, I can absolutely pick up a full semicircle worth of stuff. From here, I can actually do the same thing, bringing a weapon down, but I normally, except in armored combat, don't like parrying weapons down. It can lead to funny things. Anyway, but I can cover this target area. My preference, if I'm here, is actually to drop my point straight down and then circle back up. And for those of you who have been in my classes, this is what I call let no changer come before your sword. I like that one a lot. And, we can do the same thing on the other side as well. So those are other ways that we can make sure that we are covering that whole line. There's one other one that's really important that I want to talk about, and that is the Wechselhau-Abschneidung combination. And the Wechselhau is when we strike to the floor and then bring the blade back up and then attack here. For our purposes, I usually talk about the Wechselhau as just being the strike to the floor part, and this being the Abschneidung. And you can see that what I'm doing, I'm driving the pommel down to bring the blade up, and then it's coming across. So again, my invitation here needs to be that my upper target is open, but now I'm covering any possible upper target that they could aim for and deflecting the point from there and then coming in from the attack. Some sources do like to do this more as a big loopy thing with a cut back to that side. I prefer the version where we stop at the midpoint and then cut back into the same side because I find that a little bit safer. But again, it's all about, this is the threat that I'm giving you to attack into. I know this attack is coming, so now I'm clearing it and going. So, be aware of where you can be targeted. Give the person targets that you know where they can hit you, and make sure you know how to cover them and train yourself so that you can do it consistently and well. And you'll never get hit in a sword fight. Easy. Thank you very much.